Good morning, YouTube family, and welcome back to VW Family Farm. I'm Andrea, and I'm thankful you chose to spend a few minutes with me. This video is going to be a goat fence collaboration. There's several channels involved in this. It was mainly organized by Farmer G and Sweet Iris Farm. Farmer G did a lot of work sending out the info that they wanted kind of included and how they kind of wanted this to go. So thank you, Farmer G. If you haven't checked them out, you should. I'm going to read you, I wrote down the channels that are in this collaboration so y'all can check them out. They're all great channels. I will link them below in the description, and they'll all have a video out on goat fences. It is Farmer G, Sweet Iris Farm, Wholesome Roots, Papa Pepper, and Home in the Sticks, along with us, VW Family Farm. So check those channels out. Every one of those is a great channel. I want to start off today, before I take you out and show you kind of how we do our goat fences, because if you haven't noticed, I'm in the greenhouse. This is just a really cheery place this time of the year for us because there's all kinds of stuff growing in here. It's green, it's usually warm and tropical feeling, whereas outside it's still raining. There's actually flood warnings and stuff around. It has rained so much this winter, which I'm not complaining. There is just so much mud. It's crazy. And we are trying to haul hay and feed animals and all that, as I know all of y'all are out in the mud in the rain. I'm trying to milk cows. It's just, it makes everything more difficult. But we will be hoping for this rain come August. So I'm trying not to complain. At least I have a warm, dry home to live in that after we get all muddy, we can go in and get dry and warm, right? Well, the first thing, I've been thinking about this for a while. Before we get to the goat fence, I wanted to talk to y'all for a few minutes this morning. If you are watching this because you're interested in getting goats, that's awesome. Goats are a great thing for a homestead. From milk to meat to, like I use them for soaps and lotions. Goat's milk is so healthy for your skin. Goats just have many wonderful places on a homestead. A lot of times it seems like that's where people start on a homestead. Goats and chickens and things like that. Not everybody, but some people. So if you're watching this because you're thinking about goats as one of your first animals, maybe you're dreaming about having a homestead, or maybe your homestead's in the beginning stages. I just want to take a few minutes and encourage you on a couple different areas that I've been thinking about lately. We don't know everything there is to know by far. We learn things about homesteading every day. Some of these things I wanted to share with y'all are just little bits of wisdom that were passed along to us by people a little bit further along in the journey along the way. And so if I can do that for y'all, that'd be awesome. If I can encourage you, if you're discouraged right now or you're just getting started, to keep you from some of the mistakes we've made, that'd be great. If you don't remember anything else I said ever, remember this. I want to encourage you not to get discouraged. That's just the thing that's been on my heart, is to tell others that this journey, this homestead journey, does not happen overnight. In fact, I've told y'all before, Ben and I have gardened for our whole marriage, so 20 years. And we were involved in some of our, you know, parents and grandparents gardening even before that. But on our own, we've gardened for 20 years. Now, we've by no means raised all our own vegetables. We were growing like what I'd call a seasonal garden. And then back in 2012, just some health issues and just some different life events, which we've told on other videos, kind of led us into this homestead world. And we built this homestead from the ground up since 2012. And we didn't really know anything about YouTube or homesteaders on YouTube. We just knew just a very few handful of people around us doing it, but not many at all. And we felt pretty weird and pretty like, okay, do we belong back in like the 1800s or something? What is wrong with us? But now that we found YouTube, there's a whole world of you out there. There's so many people interested in getting back to our roots and getting back to a more simple way of living and providing for ourselves. So that's been awesome. But I tell y'all all that to say, and I promise I'm getting to the goat fence here in a minute. This all ties into it. But I say all that to say, we didn't build this homestead overnight. Ben and I were pretty much, when we started YouTube, we were already at the point that a lot of people are building towards, to where we were raising almost all of our own food. Now, I've told you before, we still go buy staples at the store. We still like to go out to eat sometimes and all that kind of thing. We could eat our own food most of the time. Sometimes our own choices, we choose not to. But we didn't have a YouTube channel all those years of growing our homestead. I think it's awesome for those of you who do, because people are getting to see every step of the way. Ours was already set up. And I tell this to people I talk to in person all the time. This took us years to build all this. So don't think that like your first year homesteading, you're gonna be as established as someone who's been doing it for years and years, because you're setting yourself up for failure and to be discouraged. Because every animal you add onto your homestead has a whole set of unique requirements for itself. So if you plan to add goats this year, which is what this video is about, if you couldn't tell, you're gonna have to learn what you can about goats and about parasites and foot rot and the things that come along, common ailments that come along with goats. How to keep goats in a fence. What kind of fence do you need? So we did not add all these different types of animals and grow the huge amount of garden that we do now all at once. We took it one, maybe two, maybe three things at a time. And it seems like each year, we don't plan it that way, but each year there's a big project in front of us that once that's done, we're set up to raise some other type of animal or do a whole nother garden or whatever the case may be. But that is my main point I want to get across to y'all, is don't think you got to do it overnight, because if you do, one of two things will happen. You will work yourself into the ground and you'll be so tired and burn out that you eventually probably will just quit, or you will do too many things at once and you will do none of them well. And I say that not to be like know-it-all or anything, but because we've done those. We've done both. We've gotten way too many things going. We've had moments where I've even cried and said, I am overwhelmed. I cannot do this anymore. And that's when Ben is literally my best friend, better half. That's when he steps in, because he's not a get overwhelmed type person. He's a like, let's do what we can, and when the dust settles at the end of the day, that's what we got done. And then we've been where we had too many things going, where we weren't doing any of them well, and animals would get sick, or maybe an animal might die, or the garden would suffer because we didn't take care of a problem we saw at the beginning of the problem because we were too busy with 6,000 other irons in the fire. So I say all that to encourage you, just do what you can, because you will get there, but you cannot build a homestead in one summer. It's just not doable. So if goats are your thing, I'm going to give you some tips we've learned along the way with goats, and start there. And if all you get done this year is goats, you're a lot further along than you were last year, and you can do it. I want to encourage y'all, anyone can do it. You just have to be willing to work for it. But to be honest, people look at homesteaders and think, how do they have the time to do all that? Because let's be honest, most homesteaders are working a full-time job while they're building their homestead. And so it does look from the outside like, how do they have time? But when you're not running to the store all the time to buy groceries, sack them up, load them in the car, bring them home, haul them in the house, cook them and all that, when all you got to do is walk outside and pick your vegetables, or they're already canned and you just pop the jar open instead of having to go all the way to town every week to spend a whole day shopping and getting it all home, you've got a lot more time to do homestead things. So be encouraged. You can do this. And also, one last thing, don't compare yourself to a homestead family. If you are a single person, or maybe just a retired couple and you're trying to set up a homestead, you may not be able to do it as fast as someone like that has, for instance, we have kids at home. We started this when they were young and we trained them up working. That's just what they know. And so now we have teenagers. So we basically have 4 adults working here all the time. Ben has a full-time job, so it's me and the kids a lot, but they are like having 2 more adults. They can do anything pretty much an adult can do. So if it's just you or just you and your spouse, take it easy on yourself. Give yourself some grace is what I'm saying, because you will get there, and anything you complete is further along on your journey than where you were before. Because let's be honest, it's a journey, and everyone's journey is a little bit different. So enjoy it and give yourself some grace. And now let's go check out the goat fence. All right, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. This is not a great time of the year for me to be telling you about goat fence because it's nasty here. It's winter, and our goats and sheep both. I talk about goats and sheep, and you may hear me say sheep instead of goats on this video. That's because we have both, and they're a mixed, there's a flock and a herd, so I'm gonna call them a Flerd. How about that? So this Flerd is mixed up, and right now they are in like a permanent fence, which is what we built from the beginning, and I'm going to show it to you. It is made out of this it's got like goat squares in it. That is the fence. We paid quite a bit for it. It's a good fence. It's what you get at like TSC. I'm going to show you, turn you around and show you down the whole line of fence what it looks like. It's put up with T-posts. This fence, I'm going to back up and let you look at it. It cost us about $1,000 to build, so that just gives you some perspective. So it goes all the way down there. It's a long fence, and then you probably can't see real well. So I hope y'all can see behind me. Then down there at the highway, it turns and goes that way, and then it goes all the way back up that way. I'm gonna turn you and show you that. Okay, I don't really know how many acres this pen is. I'm gonna ask Ben and have him scroll it across the bottom of the screen. We've had it not full enough where they weren't eating all the grass and stuff that was in it, and then we've had it way too full where they didn't hardly have anything to eat and we had to feed hay. But here's a couple problems. When you put your goats in a permanent fence like this, like we have, and the reason I'm not going into great detail about that fence is because I don't like that fence, I don't like that pen, is because your parasites can quickly get out of control. And I'm sorry, the cows across the road are bawling for food. I think their feed truck is over there. But your parasites will quickly get out of control if you have them on one paddock and you never move them. That's just how some people are forced to do it. I realize that. I'm not knocking you if you do it that way. It just creates a whole nother set of problems you have to deal with. You have to really stay on top of your parasite control. Checking the eyelids and seeing, you know, if you need to deworm and all that. Switching your dewormers up so that your worms are not getting resistant to it. All those types of things. Hoof rot, foot rot, whatever you want to call it. That's another major issue. So those types of fence have their place on a small homestead that has no room to rotational graze. But we stumbled upon this Premier One electric fence last year, and I'm going to be honest with you, we spent about $300 by the time we bought 2 of them and some of the black poles to go with them and whatever, because it's hard to have one set of that. If you're going to buy the Premier One fence, it's hard to have one set because you've got to have an additional one to set up to have something to put them in. If that makes sense. You can't move them from one into nothing while you move that fence. So you gotta have 2. I'm gonna turn you around and show you where ours are. So we've got all of ours piled up under the barn right now because it's winter. But we moved ours around and we didn't have extra pasture space to rotate sheep and goats. So we moved them around our yard this summer. And they mowed the yard for me. It saved me tons of time because I needed a new riding mower. And so I told Ben, I said, I want some sheep because sheep will eat grass. Now goats are more of browsers. They like browse. They get the reputation that they like trash. But goats really don't prefer like just eating junk. But the things they do prefer are things like blackberry vines and things like that that don't grow back very quickly. So once they eat all those, then they will browse on stuff that gives them that reputation that they like junk and briars and things like that. But they actually prefer the good stuff. But we've got these sheep and goats and moved them around the yard. It worked awesome. We had not one single case of foot rot all summer. We had to deworm 0 times. They were like almost worm-free. It was amazing. But they kept moving. Every day or two, they were on new ground eating our yard, and that helps break your worm cycle. So my goat fence suggestion is Premier One fence. #1, hands down. But here's a couple things to consider with that. If your goats have horns, they might tear your fence up. They might get stuck in that fence and tangle themselves up and strangle themselves. So if your goats have horns, I don't know, mine don't, so I don't know how that would work, but I just want to throw that out there. Another drawback to the Premier One fence, and I'm just trying to be honest with y'all and throw it all out there so you know what you're getting into. We're in Arkansas. It gets 150,000 degrees here in the summer. No, not really, but it does get really hot. And at some point, it's like our water faucet of rain will just turn off and we'll get no rain for a while. And you talk about your ground being hard as a rock, ours gets hard as a rock. And those little pegs on the Premier One fence don't want to go in the ground very easy. So we wound up having to get a tent stake and a hammer and pre-hammer holes for them to go in. It worked. It was one of Ben's genius ideas. It did work, but it was a pain. But if you're going to go with the Premier One fence, I think there's a version that has a step-in peg. Pay the extra for it. If you are going to go with just a standard fence that doesn't move, be prepared to buy some dewormer. Be prepared to feed, because if you have a drought and they run out of feed, you're gonna have to feed them. I think that's the #1 misconception about animals getting out that we've learned over time. You will have an animal here and there that will get out just because they're ornery and they just want to, and they can, and they're gonna show you that they're the boss. To be honest, that's the ones we don't keep here on the farm. We've had cows that will literally just bulldoze through a fence or jump over it. If they do that very many times, they go to the sale barn. That's just the way we have to do it, because we can't risk an animal getting run over and hurting a person. And for their own safety, if we can't keep them in, they can't stay here. But for the most part, if you give an animal what they need, feed and water, they're gonna stay in. If you think about it, if you got hungry and ran out of food, you would probably at some point do whatever it takes to get to food. I mean, it drives people to steal, which I'm not saying stealing's ever okay, but if you're hungry, you're gonna do what it takes to get food. Well, an animal has those same instincts. If you don't feed them, they're gonna get out. Now, again, like I said, I don't know everything, and some animals just get out just because they're ornery. But for the most part, if an animal has what it needs, it will stay in. I don't know how else to say this other than just say it, but this is something we've just learned over time ourselves. If you don't have the money to feed an animal, you probably should wait about getting it. Maybe wait a little bit longer in your homestead journey before you purchase that animal. Because if you can't feed an animal, you're gonna have problems. If you can't find hay and you don't have enough grass, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna have animals getting out or getting sick. So I think that is all I've got. My #1 recommendation is Premier One fence, but it is by no means foolproof. And like I said, we spent some time this year just getting that fence poked into the ground. It wasn't the easiest thing to do some days. Now when we get a rain, it just pop right down in the ground. So I hope this helps y'all. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me. And remember, the point of all I said at the beginning is be encouraged. Just do what you can do and enjoy the ride, because this homesteading journey is super fun if we make it that way. But we can stress out and overwhelm ourselves, which I have a tendency to do and I'm trying to work on. So don't do that, because it's not fun. Thank y'all, and I will see y'all next week, I guess. And I have a huge announcement about our homestead next week. I'm gonna vlog this weekend and early next week, and then I'll be letting y'all in on the secret. So I will see y'all later. God bless.